There was 14 people killed. The main boss was decapitated, and they were playing basketball with his head. The recruit was panicking. I jumped out of the car, took the rifle, busted the bullet out and cocked it back in, and I shot him again. All that built up of violence and memories and people that you loved gone starts getting to you, starts eating up what you have left of a human inside of you.
Today, Ali Gonzalez is a boxing instructor. He also works with NGOs, trying to keep young boys away from cartels. But back in the day, he was one of those boys. And what he ended up doing for the Sinaloa cartel is unspeakable. Let's learn his whole story, how he entered a life of crime, why he wanted to leave, and how he managed to. Trigger warning. This video will discuss graphic details of cartel violence in Mexico. Ali Gonzalez was born in the state of Guerrero, Mexico. Guerrero is southwest, next to Michoacan, the headquarters and birthplace of El Mencho, the head of the Jalisco New Generation cartel. In other words, this is a dangerous part of Mexico, ridden with crime and cartels fighting for bigger territory. But when he was still a toddler, Ali and his family moved to Southern California for a better, safer life. But safety was not on Ali's mind as a kid. His environment in California was just as violent as the one back home.
A normal, you could say, American childhood, around gangs and all that good stuff that corrupts a kid.
Ali lived in Compton, LA, always in between warring gangs and teens trying to pit one against the other.
Growing up, you had to be careful where you're walking, what colors you're wearing, because obviously there's a lot of mugging going on, theft, Grand Theft Auto, gang banging shootouts, so you're under a lot of stress the majority of the time.
For kids as unfortunate as Ali, a life of crime is normalized from a very young age. Young boys are roped into gangs by older boys and given a false sense of security, perhaps even the promise that they would be cool and respected if they joined, and an outcast if they didn't.
¿Cuáles son sus nombres?
Eric y Manuel.
Eric y Manuel. ¿De dónde son originarios?
De Reynosa, Tamaulipas.
¿Qué piensan hacer?
Vamos a hacer del cartel del Golfo.
El cartel del Golfo. ¿No quieres estudiar tú, joven?
No, eso ya es para niños chiquitos.
¿No te importa el estudio?
No, nada.
This is how gangs get young kids to join. And this is even how the bloodiest Mexican cartels get the same kind of recruits. To a little boy, cartels seem cool. They're a sure way to prove you're tough and brave. And in certain places, cartels offer kids a sense of belonging they sadly don't get at home. Once they do join, though, kids are immediately desensitized to violence, forced to do unspeakable acts, and threatened with death if they don't.
Going on 13 years old the first time I took a life. It's just one day, got invited to Mexico. I didn't know what was going on at first. And I see about 6 people kneeling down. I've done the simple stuff that everybody starts doing, pulling teeth out, cutting fingers up, slowly.
The simple stuff. That's how this ex-Sicario described it, because he was comparing it to the worst things he had to do.
He pulled out a handgun, told me to kill that person, the one kneeling in front of him. And I just shot him. And he said he was putting me on his payroll.
Similarly to this former Sicario, Ali also felt pushed into a life of crime from an early age.
Growing up in a broken family, the circumstances of why my father went to prison that pushed me towards gangs, towards committing crimes.
Ali's father was nothing short of a monster. When the kids were still young, he SA'd Ali's sister, and Ali was a witness to it.
The stress of seeing that obligated me to try to kill him. Stabbed my dad a couple times. Obviously I was barely 12.
Almost overnight, Ali became an adult. He saw his sister lose her childhood in the worst way possible, and he tried taking matters into his own hands, losing his own childhood in the process. With gangs on the streets and this happening at home, Ali became a violent person himself, if only from a desire to seek justice for his sister. Ali's father was arrested and sentenced to 16 years in prison. Most of the children were happy to see him gone, but their now single mother was left helpless. She did not speak English, and she did not work at the time. With no other relatives from Mexico around in LA, the kids were mostly left to fend for themselves in a violent, chaotic world they barely understood.
So that was what pushed me into crime, into gangbanging, into hustling for money.
Ali Gonzalez was not roped into cartels as a young boy. Instead, he entered a life of crime gradually, with theft and home invasions. But by the time he was 15, Ali was asked to move narcotics from one place to another, and so he found himself enmeshed in the cartel world before he even knew its name. Ali was aware of the everyday dangers, but he had no idea of the actual size of the blood empires behind the small street gangs he was working with.
When you're in gangs, you know the heat that you're gonna get yourself involved. It's a lot of racial fighting going in because at the same time it's Mexicans against Mexicans.
It's a never-ending eye for an eye. One person is unalived, so their gang must take a life from the gang who took theirs. There can never be peace, and it often escalates to a point of no return. This is how Ali became a sicario, or a hitman.
At that age, I was still young and stupid. That's when I decided that, you know what, maybe I should try some luck in Mexico, maybe try to get away from gangs, get away from the violence.
But as 17-year-old Ali arrived in his home country, he buried himself even deeper in cartel life. First, Ali was taken aback by the different culture. After growing up around Chicanos, English-speaking Mexicans, Ali was shocked to find no one spoke English in Mexico. In fact, some people ridiculed him for doing so. He was seen as an outsider, so he had to go back to speaking Spanish and try to adapt to a land that felt foreign.
So you're always looking out for people that look like you, that speak like you, and that act like you. That's how I ended up in Mexico.
But language was not the only shocking factor in Mexico.
It's a whole different world, and the violence that the human being is able to do is really unthinkable, Basically, they were doing worse things that we could never imagine in a first world country.
Mexican cartels are notoriously brutal. Over the last 2 decades, giants like the Sinaloa or the CJNG have even taken to the internet, posting unspeakably brutal videos where sicarios punish rival sicarios. These videos are messages to other cartels and anyone watching. Do not mess with us. This is what happens if you cross this cartel. But they also offer a quick look into the sinister reality of crimes happening right now in Mexico. Before we go on, I must urge you not to go looking for these videos. They are truly traumatizing to watch, and nothing good can come out of it. This is the harsh reality Ali was exposed to while he was still a teen, and it was mostly young boys doing the unspeakable acts. Indeed, they were boys from impoverished backgrounds, determined to make a name for themselves and, well, stay alive.
Dijo, bueno, ya están aquí. El que se quiere ir que se vaya ahorita. Y cortó cartucho con la pistola. Aquí la única forma que te vayas es por las patas por delante.
The Network for the Rights of Children in Mexico estimates that there are over 35,000 children and teens involved in cartels. Some have no choice. They're born into drug-addicted families, or families that are already active parts of the cartels. And when they get inducted, if they refuse to do the unthinkable, they are often unalived on the spot.
¿Cómo te llamas?
Edgar, yo me Lugo.
¿Cuántos años tienes?
¿A los cuántos años empezaste a ejecutar?
Los 11.
Edgar was born addicted to white powder, thanks to his mother's use while she was pregnant. When he was 11, his sister's boyfriend forced him to join his cartel. Then, he started giving him narcotics so he could feel nothing while he took lives.
¿Te drogabas?
Me drogaba el negro.
¿Te drogaba el negro? ¿Desde cuándo te drogaba el negro?
Desde los 12.
¿Cómo los ejecutaste?
¿Eh?
¿Cómo los ejecutaste?
Los degollé.
It's hard to imagine what happens in a young person's mind when they do this. Perhaps there's a switch coming from a need for survival, one that allows them to never feel remorse again. Or perhaps there's endless pain, shoved in the back of the mind repeatedly until they forget it's there. Taking lives gets easier once you've done it a few times, but are these people still human?
Have you all, like, killed people with these guns?
Pues sí, pero que no conoce la gente. El problema es que mate pues, uno de mis compañeros, alguien conocido, pues familia. Pero yo supongo que si no lo conoce uno no siente nada.
Isn't it, you know, it's like another human being. Does that ever, like, weigh on the conscience? You know, you think about it.
Pues no. No es difícil porque si no lo llevan a uno.
Before he was 20, Ali Gonzalez started working as a hitman for the Sinaloa cartel. To this day, it's Mexico's biggest and most powerful criminal organization. Ali explained the main job as a sicario for a big Mexican cartel.
Obviously, they're always fighting routes towards the U.S. They're always fighting for the, how can you say this? For the permission of extortioning and stealing from the rich in whatever state they're in.
Well, not the rich. Anyone, really. During the last decade, the avocado industry in Michoacan has been reduced to ashes as the CJNG extorted every farmer, big and small, and left bodies scattered across the state.
In Michoacan, the avocado industry, first they start like taxing them with like 10% of their gains, and then they say like, why it's not easier just to take over? Give me like the property titles, or I will kidnap your daughter, I will extort you. If you don't, I'm gonna shoot you.
The bodies belong to any farmer who refused to give their farm to the cartel.
They said they were going to throw a party for us, that we were going to dance to their tunes.
What does that mean?
They say they are going to throw a party when they are going to disappear a person. That's the kind of threat that keeps you up at night. All this crime is a consequence of the increase of price of avocado. Now all of this has exploded. The extortion, kidnappings, you have to pay for protection. I'm afraid of losing my family or having them lose me.
The CJNG and the Sinaloa cartels are equipped with weapons tougher than the government's army. It really seems like there's no way to stop them from infiltrating whatever business they want.
Known by their Spanish acronym CJNG, they are equipped with military weaponry, grenade launchers, drones that drop bombs. They're using booby traps, landmines, and these homemade armored trucks called monsters.
The Jalisco New Generation cartel took the fight to the next level, shooting down a military helicopter with a rocket-propelled grenade.
And it's the same when it comes to fighting over routes. As long as there is more than one cartel in Mexico, they will be fighting one another for bigger territories and control over smuggling routes. That means a never-ending war, on top of which is the government's war on drugs. So, sicarios like Ali are necessary if the cartels are to maintain their power and keep fighting their enemies.
You have to understand that the cartels is two branches. The ones that traffic the drugs and the military side of the cartel as well. I went to a location once for the Familia Michoacana. They had 5 tons of cocaine. They also had a what do you call it? How do you say it? Laboratorio? Laboratory of methamphetamine.
Ali rarely saw these enormous quantities of narcotics. His job was simple: follow orders and take out anyone trying to cross his cartel.
So when you're working as a sicario, obviously there's rules that you cannot pass if you want to keep yourself alive, because it's a very dangerous game.
From his so-called initiation, Ali learned an important lesson: never consume anything that the cartel smuggles. It only makes you less focused and unable to do your job.
Obviously, the people that would do drugs, you would see them lasting 3 months, 2 months. They would end up getting murdered.
Shockingly, there are cartels that pay their hitmen in strong uppers instead of money. But that only gets these people addicted and unable to work. When they end up in debt, they get unalived by their own cartel, if a rival one hasn't done it already.
Were you ever scared for your life?
Every day. That's how you live. Anybody that says that they're not scared of that type of life is probably lying, you know. Every time that I would get close to somebody, that person would get murdered, and it was just a circle that was not ending.
This is a big part of working for cartels, a part that's too rarely talked about. As a hitman, you don't get to make friends. If you make friends, you risk losing them. Other friends turn against you, corrupted by a rival cartel or promises of a higher position from up above. Sicarios are known to turn on each other and even take each other's lives after fighting side by side. Cartels are a dog-eat-dog world, and sicarios are taught that, to climb up the ranks, you must throw your mates under the bus. Whether it's ratting on your friend for stealing or framing them for something they didn't do, there are many ways to take their lives and ensure a promotion. Being a sicario is a lonely life filled with fear and paranoia. This constant feeling was the start of Ali's desire to leave that world. But leaving is easier said than done. First off, deserters end up with a hit on their head from their cartel kingpin. And secondly, they can't just go to the authorities and spill everything. You see, authorities are often intertwined with cartels in Mexico. This is how cartels end up protected instead of dissolved.
Is police connected to cartels?
Yeah, definitely. Local police are 100%. State police, you could say 50-50. It's basically the same law that Pablo Escobar told the government. You know, it's plata o plomo, you know?
Plata o plomo, translated as silver or lead, was a simple offer Escobar made to authorities. Choosing silver meant accepting his bribes to protect his cartel and his smuggling routes. Choosing lead meant refusing the bribes and earning a bullet in your head. Sadly, this is still happening in Mexico. Cartels seem in control of the government, not the other way around.
What was the most violent thing you've seen?
I've seen a lot of violent things, and I would have to say it was a time where they picked up like around 12, 15 people. Not all of them were enemies, you know? Sometimes you're in the wrong moment at the wrong time. There was women and men. I didn't take part. Our group had just arrived in the ranch where this was taking place, and they went at it with axes and chainsaws. They remembered everybody.
The sicarios also filmed everything as a message to their rival cartel, but not all the lives they took were involved with this cartel. Some were just friends and girlfriends of these people. They didn't care. For many of these men, this seemed fun. This is the sort of thing that had Ali dreaming of leaving this life behind.
Once the society or the people where these people are operating, they see several heads appear in the morning with a big old message, or several pieces of bodies scattered around the city, then it's easy for you to go and ask for extortion from anybody.
Ali wasn't just an innocent bystander to these horrors. Entrenched in the Sinaloa cartel, he was asked to do increasingly brutal acts, some which haunt him to this day.
I was taking 2 recruits to do a task that was given to us. We pull up near this person, and this person is obviously a rival.
One of Ali's recruits fired at the rival, but only hit his leg. Then, his rifle jammed.
The recruit was panicking. I jumped out of the car, took the rifle, busted the bullet out and cocked it back in, and I shot him again.
But the rifle jammed again, and the rival sicario was still breathing, crawling on the pavement in a desperate effort to escape Ali and his crew.
I basically went up to him and smashed him with the butt of the rifle until his head exploded.
Ali estimates that he took around 70 lives for cartels. Today, he looks back with guilt and regret. But back then, he says it was a survival skill not to think about it. It was only a job for him, nothing more. You know how it's said sicarios only leave their cartels in a patrol car or a body bag? Well, Ali's way out was going to prison. When a rival cartel unalived one of Ali's friends, Ali went by himself to get revenge, without a green light from his boss. He was caught red-handed and alone by authorities on the right side of justice.
I was arrested, taken, tortured, and then later on informed that I was being accused of murder in first degree.
Ali was sentenced to 30 years behind bars, and yet he was released after serving only 3. Inside the prison, Ali found violence even more brutal than outside.
And the riot popped off right 2 weeks when I was in there. There was 14 people killed. The main boss was decapitated, and they were playing basketball with his head.
That was just so the inmates could get the guards to take out their trash. Crammed cells lead to constant fights and illnesses that can prove fatal. And the guards are not in charge. The inmates are.
Because for every prison that there is a cartel behind it. The guards sometimes they have no option, you know? It's like they're there between the sword and the wall.
Ali was lucky to be released while he was still young and offered a chance at a safe life, away from the cartel horrors. But he is left half a person after what he saw and did.
All that built up of violence and memories and people that you loved gone starts getting to you, starts eating up what you have left of a human inside of you.
Today, Ali converted to Islam. He is speaking for peace and encouraging young boys to stay away from gangs and cartels, no matter what they promise them. He still remembers how his scarring childhood trauma pushed him into the worst kind of life and regrets not going another way about it.
Nowadays, I'm a boxing instructor because I've always been into combat sports. We have a group of kids in Mexico that we help out, obviously, trying to give them the best advice to avoid what one has been through, you know? So for me, it's if I can put in any small seed of help in order for our future generations, I'd rather do that than anything else.
Perhaps Ali will score some good karma points after 2 decades of unspeakable acts, but it remains disturbing to see that for most sicarios, the only way out is in a body bag. Hey, thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on Ali's case? Do you know similar ex-hitman stories? Leave a comment, and before you leave, make sure you like and subscribe. See you next time.